show.
I'm Ernie Chambers, as usual, and I'm going to talk about a few things today, as usual, but I've got to say something about the COVID-19 issue because there still are people not taking proper precautions by getting the vaccination. And when it comes to wearing a mask, that is not designed for the safety of the wearer. It's designed to protect others, to keep your moisture from contaminating the air. If you're not vaccinated, you are the one who should be most concerned about wearing a mask if you deem yourself to be your brother and your sister's keeper. I wear a mask whenever I go around people. In March, I got my second shot, and being 84 years old, I'm in that category where a booster is recommended. So as soon as Moderna comes out with a statement of the booster shot or the third vaccination, I will count the number of months since I was the recipient of my second, and I will take that third one. I don't care what other people say. I don't care how they are careless. I am responsible for myself. I will not do anything to endanger or compromise my own health. I will not let my personal welfare be politicized by empty-headed people who spew slogans, cliches, and whatever the latest thing is they happen to have read on social media. I could be called a dinosaur when it comes to what they call high tech. Not only do I not have or use the computer, I don't even know how. But as long as books are published and there is some avenue to receive news, and by the way, people do print up things in the way of news stories that may not be carried in the daily paper. And because they know I don't have access to the computer, they will make sure I get copies of those articles. I subscribe to over a half dozen magazines because I want to keep tabs on what goes on in the world, not just to be able to talk to other people about it, but I have what I would call an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. I want to know what's going on for my own sake, not to win an argument, not to dispute, but just because there's something in me, the way my mind operates. I want to know as much as I can about as many things as I can. It's why I always was ready in the legislature. If something came up on the spur of the moment, I would be able to, I will use the term sing. By the way, I'm called the burglar of music because I break into song. When I sing, well, it goes like this. When I'm sad, I sing, and then the whole world is sad with me. I've never pretended to be able to carry a tune in a bucket. But again, like Popeye, I am what I am. If I decide to break into song, I may offer an apology because I'm concerned about how the listeners or hearers may be affected by it. Or let's say a warning even. I can come up with a song, I can come up with a Bible verse or a stanza or two of poetry that will apply to whatever comes up on the spur of the moment. And they thought that there was something magical about it, but there was nothing magical about it at all. I prepared. That was my watchword. Be prepared. When you're in a setting like the legislature and outnumbered more than 45-1, then you are ready to deal with whatever may come up when there are 45 people who may be coming at you from different directions. So I'm one of those people who can think on my feet or on my seat because I think with my brains, not my body. Emotions do not govern and control me. When the emotions take over, your mind takes a vacation. I am regretful that people are not taking the COVID-19 and its variants, I call them mutations, seriously. Nature, and that's a term that people use to apply to different things. Some refer to nature rather than God. Some people refer to nature as the way science operates. It's like a term that can be used for any purpose. It's like a suit made out of pliable rubber. It'll fit somebody who weighs 300 pounds, or it shrinks down to its natural size, and somebody who weighs 100 pounds can wear it comfortably. So nature equips all living things to survive in a hostile environment. Bacteria are nature's children. Viruses are nature's children. For the ease of discussion, let the bacteria be considered part of the animal kingdom, viruses part of the vegetable or plant kingdom. They are living things. They carry on life functions. And if there is something that comes into their environment that will destroy them, not a single one, but get down to the genetic level and would wipe out that species, whatever it is, nature will cause what's known as a mutation. It's a change at the genetic level that will allow that living creature to adapt and survive in this newly hostile environment. But not every individual will survive, just like not every human being will survive. So when the bacteria, we're dealing with a virus, so I'll stick to Cyrus the virus. As these vaccinations, the vaccines come into play, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I read. The virus, in order to survive, has to adapt and build a defense against the vaccines. So what may have worked last year may not work this year. The virus is a variant, or it develops a mutation that allows it to survive. When you look at the fact that human beings and every other living creature faces danger, at least as a human being, you don't have predators like animals in the wild would have. But if you go into the wild and are careless, you may become the meal of a predator, which does not even include human beings on its diet. But if you have bone, which you have, gristle or tendons and ligaments, which you have, blood flowing, which you have, muscle tissue, fat tissue, that's what predators live on. They have preferences like you do. If people have made up their mind that they don't care what happens to them, why should I argue with them or become angry? It's not my place to be responsible. However, I do feel I owe something to everything born of a man and a woman. Females are my sisters, males are my brothers. I'm talking now about the generality, not individuals, because there are a lot of individual white people who I think are hateful. I think they are larcenous. I think they are murderous. But I think there are people like that in every so-called race. This is a point where you can say there's only one race when it comes to human beings, and that's the human race. but it's divided into what you might call families. Some families have wise parents. They have a societal structure, which is based on everybody helping and looking out for everybody else. Others may be cutthroat, dog eat dog, like the mob. If people don't care about their health, I cannot be more concerned for them than they are for themselves. But I do feel a kind of sadness and a sense of loss when a human being dies unnecessarily. Why do you think I'm opposed to the death penalty in all cases? Whoever the perpetrator is, whoever the victim is, whatever methodology the perpetrator uses to take the victim's life, I simply don't believe that one human being has the right, the moral right, to take another human being's life. And certainly the state does not have that right. If you want to become a member of the European Union as a country, individuals are not there. You cannot have a death penalty. Turkey wanted to be a member of the European Union, so they gave up the death penalty, wanting to get whatever economic and other benefits come from being a member of that organization. Turkey was interested enough in that to say, we won't kill human beings anymore as a punishment. Whatever their morality was, whatever their religion happened to be, could not lead them to place that value on every human life. People who look at it deeply from a philosophical or a truly religious standpoint will acknowledge that every human being is endowed with or imbued with a certain fundamental dignity, which no other human being, whether acting as an individual, acting in a gang, acting in a mob like the Ku Klux Klan, or acting in what has organized themselves into a society or a state. If one man or woman doesn't have the right to kill, three people, just because there are now three of them, will not develop or gain that right to kill. If there are more who come along, and there are now 1,000, the 1,000 have no more right to take a life because there are that many of them than that individual. Therefore, the state can never have the moral right to take a human life. It degrades and disavows that fundamental human dignity which every person has. And it has nothing to do with how a person behaves. So I, not from a religious standpoint, although originally that's what it was, do not believe in the death penalty. I never have. The church that I grew up in did not believe in the death penalty. When you're young, you believe or try to believe what those you respect claim to believe. I found out that people in churches will talk a good game, but when the whistle blows or the gun sounds and the competition is underway, it becomes a different matter. It's every man or woman for himself or herself, and the devil take the hindmost. That never was my philosophy. I have written to Southern governors when I was aware that somebody was to be executed, even on the rare occasion when the person got the death penalty for killing a Black person. I would write knowing that it made no difference to that governor what I wrote, asking that that person's life be spared. But I didn't do it for the governor. I didn't even do it for the condemned person. I did it for me. If I saw, and I don't know how to swim, if I saw an infant that had fallen into a swimming pool, although I don't know how to swim, there would be a compulsion in me to jump into that water and do the best that I could. So probably what I would try to do or let myself do is sink to the bottom, push myself above the water, take the infant, and if I sank again, try to move myself toward the edge of the pool. Desperate people resort to desperate measures. What I'm trying to get across now with all of this conversation is the concern that I have for people, even when they don't have it for themselves. You all who profess and pretend to be Christians should look at that one you say that you serve, that you believe in, took as his guide and his philosophy. Now, I've seen things in the Bible that contradict themselves. One of the big things, and then I'm gonna get back to that point. Let me go ahead and make the point. Jesus, when he was dying, those of you who read the Bible know that he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." He was coming from the position I'm coming from. They knew that they had beaten him, but contrary to what people think, when Pilate had him lashed, Pilate was not punishing him. Pilate was trying to arouse sympathy in the minds of these people, the Jewish people, who thought Jesus was out of line because of what he taught. Pilate was trying to evoke sympathy. Pilate was a Roman. Romans were brutal, bloodthirsty people in general, based on the way they're stereotyped. But here was a secular individual trying to persuade religious people that they should not go to a heathen like Pilate, who represents Rome, the Roman Empire. They should not go to him to kill one of their own. And he was trying to make this point. There was an occasion that arose during all of this handling of Jesus when, according to the Jewish custom at Passover, somebody's life could be spared. So Pilate put Barabbas on one side, Jesus on the other, and asked, "Who do you want?" And they were confused as to what they should say. Here was Barabbas, this man who had committed various crimes, insurrection, riotousness, and so forth. And then this guy over here who had healed sick people, cast out devils, they believed in stuff like that, fed thousands of hungry people, had not lifted his finger to kill a fly as far as we know, or called down a lightning bolt to kill his enemies. Pilate said, "Which one do you want?" And they said, "Barabbas," because the religious people had said Barabbas, and the crowd echoed, as they do now, what their leader said. And Pilate said, "Well, what should I do with your king?" "Don't say he's our king, say he says he's our king." Well, that's beside the point. Those are just words. What should I do with this man? And again, they were unsure. So again, the religious people, as the ones you see today, leading the charge to hurt people, to ban them from this country, to treat them cruelly when they come here. Did you see on television where these racist white people on horseback treating the Haitians who are black like me and you like livestock in the United States of America, the land of the free, the home of the brave, the city set up on a hill, the most humane, righteous country in the world, they say about themselves, treating people like livestock? running them down on horseback. That's America. That's what America really is. And they used to could do it when nobody was looking, but now there are eyes of an electronic kind who are always looking. Jesus was going to be executed by the Romans. The Jews could not kill him. They could not carry out a death sentence. So all this talk of stoning people and so forth, that's nothing when the devil in the flesh takes over. The Romans, the cruel, brutal people, cut all that stuff out. If there's to be a death sentence carried out, it was carried out. The execution was by the Romans. And the offense had to be committed against Rome. But the Romans were smart enough to allow those who were subjugated to carry on some of their superstitions and their religious practices as long as they did not threaten the integrity or the power of Rome. So Pilate wrote, King of the Jews, and they said, don't say he was a king of the Jews. Take that down. And Pilate was sick of them. He said, what I have written, I have written. And he might have said, you can do something with this fellow over here. You're dealing now with somebody who can handle you, who knows how to handle you. And you better not speak against Rome. You think Jesus did not know that when they stretched him, his arms on that crossbeam, that those men were driving nails through the palms of his hand? You think they didn't know that? Yeah, they knew it. And when they put somebody on that cross and the weight of a body had to be supported, the flesh and bone in a hand could not support that weight. So they had to put a footrest under that person so that the weight of the individual would be resting on that footrest. So if you see a representation of Jesus on the cross and he's hanging there and the only thing holding him up are nails in his hands and nails in his feet, that's not the way it went. When they put him on that cross and they raised it up and it fell into place and they supported it, you think Jesus didn't know what they did? Well, if he knew, you think the people who did it didn't know? When the centurion stuck the spear in his side, some people say that that guy was trying to hasten death. There are all kinds of things that grow up around an event like that. It was an event. It was a happening. You think that the person who stuck the spear in his side, and it had to be a Roman, didn't know what he was doing? And Jesus said that he was thirsty. So it said they gave him vinegar in a sponge. That was the interpretation. What some people say was that this was like a narcotic that was designed to deaden the pain. It wasn't to increase the torture. It was to try to make it less unbearable. All kinds of things. Here's Jesus having been put where he is, and everybody who played a guilty part had to know the part he played. From the religious people who incited the crowd to say, crucify him, they knew. The people in the crowd who shouted, crucify him, knew what that word meant. So they knew. When Pilate gave the directive to have the execution carried out, Pilate knew. The ones who drove the spikes through his hands and his feet, one on top of the other, they knew. And in some cases, the bones and the leg were broken, again, to hasten death, but it did cause excruciating pain. I don't know that I've ever read any place where the bones in Jesus's legs were broken. But if that were to happen, the one who wielded the mallet knew what he was doing and carried it out. Yet here is this man who is supposed to be the Son of God and God himself. I and my Father are one. He knew everything. He had to if he was God. He knew that these people knew. So was Jesus a liar when he said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do"? Everybody had guilty knowledge. Was Jesus talking in riddles even as he died? I don't know. But as an ordinary human being, I would have to say that statement makes no sense. So you have to get from the realm of the ordinary and go into the theoretical or the philosophical. They knew that they were killing a man, but they did not know the nature of the being that they perceived to be a man. So although they knew they were executing the son of a carpenter, they didn't realize that he was more than that. That might make some kind of sense, but the Bible is full of nonsense to my way of thinking. So if Jesus, who had been put through all of this torture, could say, "Forgive them," and who was he speaking to? Who had the power to forgive human beings? He didn't say, "I forgive you for what you're doing to me." He was speaking not for himself. He was speaking to someone or something. And he asked whatever that thing was or whoever that being was to overlook what these people were doing to an innocent man, because at a certain level, they did not know the true nature of their deed. They were not killing a man, they were killing a God. But a God cannot be killed. So there are many contradictions in the Bible. But people have to overlook all of that because they want to accept it to be what they've been told it means. But if you're intellectually honest, you would have questionings. And the real word, if you want to be direct and mature about it, is not you have questionings, you have doubts. You're not sure. So you don't think about it. You don't want to go where the logical processes of your mind, which is constructed to operate in a logical way. 2 follows 1, 3 follows 2, step by step. Or as the Bible says, here a little, there a little, line upon line. But the conclusion that the logic in your mind would cause you to reach, you have to shake your head and disregard it and say, we're in a realm where logic does not rule. We're in a realm of the unknown. It's beyond our ability to comprehend. So we have to take it as being true, even though we have no material evidence of it. So we have to construct a formula, according to which this way that we've decided to conduct ourselves and let our mental processes work, we have to have a formula. So the formula will be this. Faith is the word we're going to use. And faith, what is faith? I'm not going to tell you the first word, but it says the evidence of things not seen. There's no evidence of it, but you believe it anyway. But you don't really believe it. You have to say you believe it. And there was a man who heard about Jesus, and this man was desperate. And he wanted Jesus to heal him. But he also knew that what he heard about this Jesus is that he required people to tell the truth. So when the man came to Jesus, he said, Jesus, I've heard about you. You have the power to heal me. Heal me. And Jesus said, do you believe? Then, using the logic that he had, but knowing what the conditions were under which healing could come, he had to believe. He said, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. Because he had to be honest. He was saying, in the anguish of his condition and his soul, I want to believe. If I could believe, I would believe, but I don't believe. So help my unbelief. I'm coming with everything that I've got. And it doesn't meet your standard. But if your standard is what people say it is, then you will understand. And you know, if I could believe, I would. But in front of all these people, I'm debasing myself. I'm coming to another human being and saying, do for me what the doctors can't do. Heal me. And Jesus marveled and had not seen such a faith in all of Israel. And he'd say, so be it unto you as you wish, not as you believe, but believe and belief are words that can have different meanings from what the dictionary says. They can mean that you go as far intellectually as you can, but now you have to go one step beyond into the twilight zone. And you don't know what's there, but you hope that there's something there that will be of value to you. So you go as far as your mind will take you. Then you close your eyes, hold your breath, and you step off into the abyss and hope that you don't fall forever, or something worse than merely falling will happen. If religious people would get rid of the mysticism, if they would conform their own conduct to what they say they believe, you wouldn't have all of these organizations, these foundations, like the Billy Graham Association trying to get people to send money. Every preacher you know is going to end by asking for money. A guy wanted to be healed, and he came to Peter, and he was asking, and Peter said, and this was in the book of Acts, the Acts of the Apostles, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts. Silver and gold have I none, such as I have, give I unto thee. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, get up and walk. It doesn't tell what happened, but you're supposed to fill that gap in. Now, let me go back to the story where Jesus is stretched out on the cross. Who crucified Jesus? The Christians say the Jews did, and therefore they hate the Jews. But the Jews couldn't carry out a death sentence. What country, what nation What entity ruled at that time? Rome. Where is Rome? Rome is in Italy. What do they call people who live in Italy? Italians or Italians? So if a Jew could not drive the stakes, a Roman, the centurions were the ones who were in charge. The flunkies, like every military operation, will carry out orders. The ones who carried out the actual execution of Jesus were Italians, not Jews. The Italians. Who do they think of when they think of the mob? Somebody whose name ends with a vowel. Al Capone, Joe Bonanno, the Gambino family, and sometimes there would be a dispute between Italians and Sicilians, but they were all from the same general geographic area in that part of the ocean. But people don't care about what I'm talking about. They will turn on Fox News and it tells them, don't get vaccinated, so they won't get vaccinated. You know why I went through all this? To indicate that my philosophy, being that of Popeyes, I am what I am, and that's all that I am, will acknowledge that I'm still influenced to this day by things that I picked up in church as a small child and didn't know any better than to accept things that older people told me, even when their conduct deviated from what they told me. Even as a child, I didn't believe that I could justify myself in doing what I knew was wrong because the preacher did it. That's between him and God. Or your parents may not do what they say you ought to do. But if you are convinced, as at one time I was, that everything in the Bible means what it says as it's written, then you will not allow yourself to be righteous by standing on somebody else's shoulders and say, well, I'm not as bad as so-and-so. It's not a question of relativity where you're not as bad as somebody else. You have a conscience and a mind that judges you. And that's why I will tell people that I quote poems a lot of times, because they say with words that I cannot put together in the way they do. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have miles, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And when you go those miles, no matter what the outcome is, then you can lay your head on that pillow and sleep the sleep of the just. But if you don't, there's something in you that lets you know whether you've done the best that you can. And it will not let you rest. And some people call it a conscience. You don't have to go into mysticism. The other things that I had intended to talk about, I've laid aside because I'm trying to make a point. And sometimes I don't call myself a leader. I never have. White people have done that. Some Black people fall into that bag. You've never heard me call myself a leader, ever. I don't lead anybody anywhere. I do what I think is right. I say what I think needs to be said. And if somebody wants to latch on to it, they have decided to take from that what benefits them, but I'm not that person's leader. I don't tell that person what to do. So if the word lead has to attach to me, the way I want to lead is by example. I want to show that I believe what I'm saying to the extent that I direct my conduct according to what I claim to believe. And if I'm doing what I believe to be right, I don't care what anybody says. I wouldn't care what the Pope says, the president, the preacher, the teacher, and the fact that thousands of people would say it doesn't make it right any more than it's right if one person says it. So it's not the number of people who say something that will impress me. It's the logic, the reasonableness of it, and whether it accords with my belief. And the reason I say my belief, I can only live and have peace as long as I live in accord with what I believe. But I'm going to show you a contradiction that I saw in the Bible. They say God is good. All good things come from God. Well, where'd evil come from? If evil exists, God had to create it. A thing cannot give what it hasn't got. So you have to say God is evil and God is good. Everything that is a part of God. So the concept that you have of God is what's askew. You don't know what God is. You don't know if God is a who, what, or them. The Romans tried to handle it, and the Greeks by having different gods to whom they assign duties. But human beings cannot assign duties to gods. But one of them, which is obvious, and you read it in the Bible, when Saul, who had been the king, fell from his holy state and was no longer doing what God wanted, then an evil spirit came upon Saul, King Saul. And you know what the Bible called that spirit? The evil spirit from God, not the evil spirit from Satan. And God knew Satan. God knew Lucifer, because Lucifer used to be up there in the big house. How did Lucifer conceive of this thought that he had that would lead him to try to overthrow God if that's what happened? It had to come from God. It was put there by God. The Bible even says, how can the potter say to the one, how can the pot say to the potter? The potter makes the pot. How can the pot say to the potter, why hast thou made me thus? If the pot could talk, the potter would say, because I wanted to. And the pot says, I don't like it. And the potter says, so what? But if you don't like what I've made you, that means you don't like to exist. It's smashed to smithereens. There are so many contradictions in religion, in philosophy, and politics. A person can maintain sanity only, in my opinion, in one man's opinion, is to adopt my and Popeye's philosophy. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. Que sera, sera. What will be, will be. What is what it is. And as I sign off now, as the canary would say, when he discovered that the door to his cage was open, I'm out of here.
Thank you for watching The Ernie Chambers Show. If you'd like to make suggestions, email us at ewcfacts@gmail.com. That's ewcfacts@gmail.com. This has been an EWC Communication production.